Hello, everyone, and welcome to Civil Discourse. This is my 5th episode to do, and to be honest, I've really been looking forward to getting something like this done. This is the reason I started this, because today I have 3 of the people that are currently running for mayor of Beaumont, Texas. And a big part of the reason I started this show was to get you at home and everyone watching just to get involved in local politics, because I feel like our obsession and fascination with the national stage is kind of tearing us apart. And I feel that once we get that ground level built, maybe some people will see us doing this here and doing it in other cities. We have to get more involvement at the local level. I think that's something that we're missing. We're missing our communication, our ability to simply sit down and talk with one another and discuss serious issues. And the only way to solve that is to simply sit down and do it. And typing on Facebook only gets us so far. So we're here in person, live, having long format discussions at the local level about things that matter, so you can be a more informed voter when you show up to the booth. That's one of the big reasons I started this thing. So let me run through everybody real quick. Very happy to have all 3 of you here. We have Roy West over here. I'm going to get you to explain a little bit about yourselves here in a second. We have Pate in the center, and we have Biguita Hernandez all the way over there. So, man, thank you all so much for showing up here today. Like I said, this is my 5th episode to do, and I'm very thankful for everyone that came on prior to this, but this is why I'm here. This is the entire purpose.
Trevor. You know, all of us agree it's very important for people to know who our local candidates are. And one of the hardest things in the world to do is to try, we love our friends at the newspaper and the TV stations, but they get 30 seconds. The newspaper writes a story, and it's in tomorrow's paper. Now, if you take the Beaumont Enterprise, you do get the special edition when something happens. But most people don't have the opportunity to meet people one-on-one.
Right.
And that are running for any political office, and
right.
They're surprised when you say hi. In my case, hi, how you doing? I'm W.L. Pate. I'm on city council. I'm your city councilman, and they go, really? I mean, whether it's in the grocery store or McDonald's or wherever it is, because most people are surprised to see that the people that are doing this work for them actually are out there somewhere.
Right. We have to get people more familiar with the faces and the ideas that are running the towns, right? Because we're trying to get away from this whole idea of I'm voting for this person because I know their name.
Yes.
Or I'm voting for this person because there's an R next to it or a D next to it. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the things we do. We don't get this kind of engagement with locally elected officials. We simply don't. You can go to city council meetings.
Yes.
But let's be honest, they're not exactly packed. They're not exactly a lot of people in there involved, right?
Right.
There's serious discussions being had. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, and I also think it's important that as leaders.
Closer on the mic.
Sure. So maybe I should put these on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I also think it's really important, because we're all leaders here, to show people and lead by example that we all can be in a room together. We can all have a discussion. We're not at each other's throats.
Right.
We have to. We can, act with respect and decency towards one another and have a conversation. I think that's important for people to see.
I love it. So what I'd like to do, and I'm about to go to you, Roy.
Okay.
Let's just start. I'm going to hit you with a softball question. We're going to go down the row through everybody, all right?
Pitch softball. Yeah. I played both.
We're gonna get the
comes in at
softballs out
100
of the
miles
way.
an hour.
So, yeah, definitely slow pitch.
Okay.
Definitely slow pitch.
All right, just check.
Just basic information, Roy. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Let me start it with this. Was there a specific point in time that you said, "Hey, I'm going to run for mayor"?
Well, we all have different seasons of life, and certainly last few years I brought my son-in-law into the business to allow me to have more free time to give back to the community. And so, but certainly been paying attention to city council. I'm in the mortgage business and have been for a number of years, and I have a local radio show on KLVI that runs once a week. So, and concerned, my wife and I, Tricia, have 5 adult children, 3 of which are married, another one engaged, and 6 grandkids. And 4 of those children and 4 of my grandkids live here in Beaumont. And I'm concerned about our community. I think, I love Beaumont. I was born and raised here in Beaumont, and this is my home, and it's treated me well. But I feel like we need to work harder on a local level. We need to work harder across the board, but I'm talking local level here today, to build relationships and to have a vision for our city. And also, we're in the 21st century. We need better metrics. I mean, in my business, how I'm looking at it is just like I look at my business. We do goal setting. You have to work on relationships. You have to work on relationship with your team. You also have to work on relationship with all your customers. And then we have to have metrics. We have to see the measurements, how we're doing. And with today's technology, you can get down in the weeds, and that's a good thing, because you can see where oftentimes we're blind to the areas that we're weak in, and we need to all be willing to get better. And one thing I love about this process, getting better acquainted with the other candidates as well, is I think everybody that's running wants a better Beaumont. And being in communication, having this time together, this builds relationships with each of us. And because obviously there's only going to be one mayor and there's 5 people running, but I think we all still love Beaumont and we all still want to help.
That's right.
So I think it's a great opportunity, and opportunities like this to get to talk to your listeners and viewers out there is a great opportunity, because it is. We need to remember that it does matter, and if people want a better Beaumont, they need to invest at least in their vote. They need to spend some time and they need to vote. And we all know that in municipal elections, people traditionally don't show up. People will talk on Facebook, they'll talk about frustrations, but they don't show up to vote, and that matters. And the people that are running are going to pay attention. And that's a good thing. The more people, the more interest they show. I would like to see. And if you want to give me an idea on how long you want me to talk here, just go. Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That won't hurt me.
Well, you did say 2 hours.
Oh, I didn't even hear that.
That's for the whole show.
Okay. But, I think I believe that we need to get more citizen involvement. And when I say that, people that live here in Beaumont, they had their first evening council meeting of the year, and they've agreed to have one per quarter. I mean, my thought is, I look at it like business. It's customer service. Why not every week? And I realize people may not show up, but like in my business, I want to be accessible to them. And when it's at 1:30, it's less accessible than at 6 o'clock for most people. And however, most people, a lot of people aren't going to go to the council meetings, but it does take away their deal. Well, I can't get to the council meeting to do that. So if you want to engage with people, you need to give them opportunities, and you need to encourage them. And that's where the relationships come, reaching out in the communities and making sure you want to hear from them, and then get some citizen committees that are involved, and give them some ownership in it, because they become ambassadors. I have the privilege of serving on CVB with WL here, and they're like a perfect model for it. Because every month, when we meet 10 months out of the year, they tell us what they've done. They tell us what they're planning on doing. They tell us where they've been successful, where their weaknesses are. They use metrics incredibly well, down to the most, how many people come here for birding versus softball and all that. So they track all that. And everybody that walks out of there is, go CVB, man. Y'all are knocking it out of the park. They're doing restaurant week. And so here they have, now WL is their councilman, but he's there as an advisory board member, and there's several people that aren't on council that are there, and people are sold out for them. And, once you have some experience with them, you would be too. And I would like to see more of that across the departments, because oftentimes when it comes to streets and drainage and water and sewer, people get to have their own narrative out there on social media. They get to say whatever, and there's not ambassadors really for those programs. There's not a lot of metrics out there by the city saying what's happening. So you get some people saying it's really a problem and others not. But when your toilet doesn't flush, that's a problem.
Right.
When you have brown water. So I just think getting citizens' involvements, having events like this are going to build relationship, get people more involved, and And
I love it.
I could
love
pass the mic here for a
So
minute.
no, that's good. So
Well,
W,
listen, as a gentleman, I always allow ladies first. If I didn't do that, my mother and dad would be upset. So,
sure.
I'll let Biguita go.
Go
Thank
for
you,
it.
sir. So let me just caveat.
Yeah,
Okay. So
we're-
let me just caveat by saying, audience, I am taking off my mask and I'm speaking without it because WL, you have had the second vaccine, correct?
I've had the vaccine.
Okay.
Very good.
So
So
I'm
we're,
safe.
we're safe.
Okay. Alrighty. So my name is Biguita Hernandez Smith. I am not from Beaumont. I actually chose Beaumont as my community. So I am originally from New York City, specifically Staten Island, New York. And I chose Beaumont because it was a better place to raise my sons. I had a teenage son at the time who I knew could not handle the big city. And we came to visit Beaumont, and we loved it. And we thought that the people were wonderful, the culture was wonderful, the food was wonderful, the live music. One of my favorite places is a Logon Cafe. And we just liked it. It was just, when you don't know anything different, you think that that's the creme de la creme. But when you're able to experience something different and a better quality of life, and you're still able to contribute, that's a huge thing. And so we made the move. We have been living here for a total of 5 years. I moved my parents here. So my parents they're originally from Puerto Rico and Aruba, and they met in New York, and they loved Beaumont because it reminded them of the islands. It reminded them of the warm weather, the warm people, and they really have a great life here. I actually have 5 children. So we're a blended family. I met my husband here in Beaumont, so it's especially special to me. 5 children. I have 4 grandchildren, and we have roots here, and it's important to me. Let me tell you a little bit about my profession. I have done workforce development. For those who are not familiar with the term, that is really being able to come into a community, understand the needs of the workforce, and really being able to tap into the talent, develop the talent to ultimately connect them to jobs and careers. We know that entry-level jobs will not lead to a sustainable living, but we start there, and then we develop those careers. When you talk about workforce development, hand in hand, you talk about economic development, the growth and the build of small businesses and businesses as a whole. And so those two match because you cannot operate a successful business without its workforce. So that is my background. You asked about mayor. Why mayor? So why mayor? So I was living here for 4 years. When I came here, like I said, it was for my son. I was managing a national small business program for Goldman Sachs. And I'm a very spiritual person. So I said, Lord, thank you, for allowing us to live a better life. And I want to be able to contribute. But I could not contribute having managed that national program. I laid my head in Beaumont, but I was constantly traveling. The closest program was Houston. And then life happens, and I'm sure we can all relate to the experience of not planning, but life happens. And I left Beaumont. I went back to New York to do some really important work with minority and women-owned businesses. And then I went on to Houston to manage a workforce development program across the Houston Gulf region. And then life happened and brought me back to Beaumont. And I said, Lord, I cannot no longer be on the sidelines. I need to directly contribute. And I think this is a phenomenal community. Trevor, you talked about the fact that, kind of detaching ourselves from national politics and paying attention to local. This is a testament, us 3 in this room, all having great talents, all having great experience, is a testament to what we can do as a community. Really being able to get together, come to the table, and speak about how we can contribute. I think that Beaumont has a phenomenal foundation. Oftentimes people will say, people are people, and people will say, well, who's this person from New York? It's not that. It's just that, it's that you build upon a foundation. You build upon growth. I think that I can contribute a lot because I have a fresh perspective. I've been able to manage and implement different things in communities that I saw were successful and not successful. And I really would love to be able to do that in Beaumont. Beaumont has, we have a gap in our workforce. So Beaumont, is the oil and gas mecca, and we have a gap in our workforce. So we have baby boomers retiring, and we have a gap, and we need to be able to focus. Not only do we have a gap, but we really need to start to implement and explore ideas around how else do we serve our young people. Roy, you talked about how many children do you have here?
4 adult children here and
Here.
4 grandchildren. Yes.
And then but you have children who left. We don't want our children to leave. I have 4 grandchildren. I have sons here. I don't want them to leave. I want them to really be able to prosper here. And that's the work that I do. So
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
I love it. I love it. WL, why are you running for mayor?
Well, for those of you that may not be aware, actually, I've served on city council since 2007. I ran at large, and back then I think we had 6 or 7 people running. And as you know, at large, right now, the way it's set up is the top 2 of all the candidates. It doesn't make any difference if you got 10,000 more votes than the second person, and the second person won by 4. The second person and you represent the whole city. We run at large, and so we run over all 4 wards. And I had people, the first, to give you a little insight, the first political office that I ran for was United States Congress against Jack Brooks, who was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I ran as a Democrat. Now, the great thing about running for city elections is it's nonpartisan. But back then, in 1980, everybody was a Democrat. The joke in Texas was it was a 2-party system, liberal Democrats and conservative Democrats. There were no Republicans. Ken Hance was the guy that beat George W. Bush for Congress running as a Republican. Later on, Ken Hance became a Republican. But like Roy, I had my own radio show back in 2003, 4, and 5 on a Fox News radio, and we broadcast here locally, and then we were on the internet. And the first guest I had was Kyle Hayes. Let's talk about the city. Mm-hmm. Now, in the meantime, 3 years later, I had governors, senators. I had the people that you saw on national TV, whether it was Alan Combs or Bill Press or John Fund or Steve Forbes or Susan Estrich, were on my radio show calling in to talk to us here in Beaumont, Texas. Because I wanted to do basically what you're trying to do is, hey, Beaumont's important.
That's right.
And Jimmy Simmons, my great friend who was president of Lamar University, asked me, he said, you had Dick Morris call you from a payphone in downtown Manhattan. Uh-huh. This was like 2003. And how in the world did you do that? And I jokingly referred to Jimmy. I said, Jimmy, it's kind of like when you ask Susan out for the first time. All she could say was yes or no. And so Dick called on a payphone because, as Biguita's very aware, when you're walking through downtown Manhattan, the buildings are much taller than just about anywhere else. And if you're on a cell in 2003, you literally could lose it, and then you'd have to be calling back. So he stops between meetings and is calling from a payphone. And for those of you who don't know what those are, take a look at some of the movies from the 80s, 90s. Then that's where Superman used to change clothes in the old days. And but I got to talk to people to bring Beaumont to them. And I was fortunate enough, my mom and dad met during World War II, got married during the war, before he shipped out as a second lieutenant in the infantry. And I asked him, I said, Dad, what in the world were you thinking about? He said, be honest with you, son, I wasn't thinking I was coming home because most people didn't that are in the infantry. And because in a firefight, the platoon leader goes, if it lasts more than about 8 minutes, he's one of the first guys to go because he's out front. And back then, they didn't have Kevlar vests. They had cotton fatigues that were about as bulletproof as this shirt. But anyway, they settled down, and I was born in St. Teresa Hospital, a Catholic hospital to 2 Baptist parents directly across from a Jewish synagogue. And I tell people, this is Beaumont, Texas. Mm. They think it's a joke. It's the truth. And so my first house was over here. First home was a duplex on Magnolia and Live Oak. It's still there, and it was probably not much bigger than this studio as you could imagine back in 1948. And but I grew up on the north side of town, went to French high school, and but my mom and dad taught me that it's about giving back, son. You know, as Christians, when you're taught that you treat people like you want to be treated. One day, I was on my radio show talking to Lisa DePasquale, who's with the Clara Booth Luce Institute. Because literally, I had just some really great guests, because I just call them up and say, hey, you want to be on the show? Waleed Ferris, who was one of President Trump's national advisors for the Middle East, was on my show back in 2003 and 4 when we were going through Desert Storm. I've got one of the leading Middle East experts, but those are the kind of people that I would have. And I'm talking to her, and I said, you know, my mom and dad taught me that you treat people like you want to be treated. And I had a caller call in, and he said, I normally don't listen to talk radio, but I heard your voice. I had a general one time said, Major Pate, don't take this the wrong way. It's not that I don't recognize your face, but you have one of those distinctive voices. So as those of you can see on YouTube, I had a face for radio. And he said, but you got one of the most distinctive voices I've ever heard. And I said, General, I don't care how you remember me as long as you remember me. And but I told the lady, this is how I was brought up. And this guy calls in and says, are you the guy at French High School that was quarterback of the football team, that was president of the student body, and your friends called you Bubba Pate back then? Now, I had to go to WL because people kept confusing me with Bubba Smith and Bubba Buscemi that are really celebrities, you know. So I said, I'll go to WL. So now for those of you that don't know, Bubba Smith is 6'7", very distinguished gentleman. It was an all-pro defensive end for the Baltimore Colts that grew up right here in Beaumont, Texas. Of course, Bubba Buscemi was an Olympic boxer. So the joke is everybody in the South that's got an older brother, that's the nickname for a while. And Bubba. I said, yeah, I don't go by Bubba much anymore. But he said, ma'am, I want to tell you a story. I was a black student in 1965. I went to French High School, and I wanted to play football. Charlton Pollard had a great football team because that's where Coach Willie Ray Smith coached. And Bubba Smith was there, and Toady Smith, and, of course, Coach Ozan over at Hebert. But he said, I figured I could make the team at French High School because the football team isn't that good. We had a great basketball team. And he said, I must have said something that he said, I made the team, must have said something that really irritated some of my white friends. And they started just beating the crap out of me. There in the locker room, all of a sudden I see this arm come through and starts throwing these guys off. And I look up, and he said, ma'am, I want you to know, that guy is the guy you're talking to right now. And this was 1965. And he said something, ma'am, I'll never forget. He said, if you got a problem with him, you have a problem with me. And he said, after that, I never had any more problems at French High School. This is not because of me. This was the opportunity God gave me to do that because I had parents that taught me that's what it's all about, that it's treating people like you want to be treated. The reason that I ran for public office was to give back to the community. I had a staffing company. Literally, we were doing millions in revenue. We had thousands of employees. We probably put more minorities and women to work here in Southeast Texas than just about anybody. And there were people that would go to work and literally retire 25 years later and say, WL, I sure appreciate you putting me over there because I retired from that company. And that's the kind of thing that's heartwarming, is, as you said, when you understand the workforce, that it's about helping other people. God put us here to make the world a better place. He didn't put us here, and that's what I used to say on the radio. I'd say, listen, tune in. Your mission in life is to make the world a better place than the world you found when you got here.
I like it.
And God said, don't take up space. Get with the program.
There we
go.
go.
To work.
I like it. So that was all your softball questions there. Well,
Okay.
we're not going to get too crazy. I don't want to sound like yeah. So let's get into. So I put it out on social media. I said, hey, direct message me some questions you might have for people that are running for mayor, right? And I got a lot of questions about the homeless population. People hitting me up. So I'm gonna start with you, and we'll work our way back. Okay.
Sure. So I think I actually spoke about this last night. The homeless population is overwhelming here. I'm used to a huge homeless population in New York City. I think that we need to look at it holistically. So we have homeless that are, in the streets, that are, that are compromised, they don't have enough to eat, so on. But I think that we need to really be able to handle the root, because there is a rooted issue within homelessness, and it's emotional health for the most part. I think that people lose their grip on life, and I think it's important for us to focus on the why before really anything else, right? Really being able to get their mind and their spirit correct before we it's a holistic kind of approach, because we want to. I mean, obviously they need to be put in safe places. They deserve to have a home. They deserve necessities, but we need to be able to focus on the root. I had mentioned there's a woman that is always at Kroger's on Dallin, and her name is Betty. And one day I went up to her, I was just moved to go up to her. It happened to be her birthday. I wanted to give her some money. And I said, tell me your story. And she was such a sharp woman, like a whippersnapper. She's probably, older, probably in her 70s, but very, very sharp woman. And she said to me, you know what happened to me? I lost a grip, because I lost my husband, and then after that I got HIV, and then just life tumbled. And it's not that she can't be a contributing citizen, it's just that she needs some emotional TLC, some emotional care. And she wants to work, but the thing is that we have to be able to take care of all that, because if we just put her in a place only, that emotional piece is going to come back. So I say all that to say, yes, homelessness is a big issue, but we need to focus on the root.
Okay, I like it, Roy. I'm going to toss it to you.
All right. Well, it's appropriate that our city council has begun a process. They have a homeless coalition, and I've gone to most of those meetings. I think they started probably about October, maybe September, and they're at the event center. There's one coming up tomorrow at 2:00, and it's at the event center, and there's social distancing, and it brings together a lot of the people that are have ministries and or 501c3s that are currently helping minister to the homeless population. And I'm gonna start by saying I'm a member of Praise Church, and our mission statements: love God, love people, and make a difference. And the reason I'm saying that, when it comes to homelessness, there are so many layers to it, and thank you for sharing, because I mean, we all know that we've got a significant issue here, and we want to help those that can. And much like, and when you go to the Homeless Coalition and you get to hear from, I think there's 3 different ministries that the people were homeless years ago, and now they have a ministry serving the homeless. But much like when you're raising kids, you need to give them the resources, you need to give them the education to get better, but you also got to be careful about just enabling that as well. And there's certainly a lot of people with mental health issues, and being able to get them medicine and then bring them in to for services, because the big challenge is there are people that are homeless that don't want to give up alcohol and drugs, and most of the services will not serve people that are coming in high and won't follow the rules. So obviously we want to do what we can, but there are rules. There's rules in our own homes to avoid just total chaos. So the city is working towards, and there's a HMIS, which is a homeless management system that's available by the federal government. And the Spindletop Center is the only one that currently is using it here, but it allows for churches and all these different organizations to network through that, so they can share what information that they're able to, that they're providing for the homeless, what that person has asked for in the past, what they've tried to do, or if they're not in the system at all. One thing that I found is interesting, and I serve food lunch once a month at some other place with my church and my small group. So I've been familiar with Paula and the problem for a long time. But in terms of hearing all these different ministries come together, like what was shocking to me is a lot of people don't have ID. And the way to get ID if you're homeless, and the ministries would say this is what they tell them, is you got to go to jail. Because you'll get a jail ID. Because if you don't have an ID, you can't go get a birth certificate. Mm-hmm. You can't go get a driver. And, that's a bit of a problem. That the way you're going to get your ID, if you do want to make a change, is you have to go to jail. Well, Spindletop Center, one of the programs they have is they help people get their IDs. And that's funded. And, that's a lot of people in that room didn't know that. And, that's because that's kind of a first step that you need to do. You've got to be able to be identified. And but also coordinating resources. I mean, we've got a lot of loving organizations here in this church. In this community, lots of churches that want to give back. And, when you hear Paula at some other place talk about, like on some Saturdays, 3 church groups will come by and feed people sack lunches, and they're dropping them on the floor because they've already, they don't need that much food. But that's an easy fix for us sometimes as a community, but we're not organized. And if we could organize and make sure that we're meeting those needs of those that want to make that change in life, and when people aren't getting medication and they have mental illness, and I have family members that have that challenge in life, and medication's really necessary, and also if life circumstances and being able to help people get back, so many of those people that are working as ministries on the street, what they say that breaks your heart is, the common thread is, they have no hope. These people have no expectation of getting better. So, they're out there sharing the love of God with them to let them know that they are loved and that there is. But you've got to break through that wall because, there can be so much self-hate. They're just there to, they're not worried about getting better because they don't feel like they deserve it. So, but getting organized as a community, getting that homeless management system in place, I think can make a big difference. And also educating the community, the churches, because we want to help who we can help, but we also, when we're trying to feed people 3 meals at lunch, and I'm not saying that happens all the time, but we do need to be aware of it. And by using our resources better, we might be able to send some money to Spindletop Center when they run out of money for funding for people getting IDs, and be able to share resources and not duplicate services that don't really need to be duplicated in a community our size. But you need to know about it.
So, and where'd you say that was taking place tomorrow?
It happens at the event center. It's the first Thursday of every month at 2 p.m., and there's plenty of social distancing. It's a big room, and there's been usually 45, maybe to 50 people attending.
Okay, very good. Very good. Yeah, because I didn't know about that. Yeah. So hopefully some people that are watching will be able to pass that along, to some other people. I love that.
And it's open to the public.
Very good. Very good. So, WL, I'm going to bring the question to you with homelessness, but I'm going to add a little bit. So just I had one guy hit me up. I'll throw an anecdotal out there. They had a guy walking up and down the street acting crazy, right? It's going on for a couple of days. He's a long thread he sent me. So he's going on a couple of days. And long story short, they had called the police. They were talking about the guy. The police said they couldn't do anything because he technically hadn't done anything. But this guy, this is off of, I think, somewhere off of College Street. Well, you remember, I think a couple of weeks ago, a guy was waving a gun on College Street. Did y'all hear about that? Yeah. It ended up being him, okay, because that guy was near the street right there, and he knew who it was. But, he was upset because when he was calling, trying to get through the police department or the city, trying to figure out what to do about tents being down the road, just on empty spaces, And I talked to one police officer that did tell me that if it's under the highway, then there's nothing. It's just they can set up shop. That's state property. But as far as places around the town, yeah, he's not so much worried. I don't think some of these citizens are so much worried about the homeless people themselves. It's just the drug use, I think,
Right.
because that's what he was going back to. He was saying, like, it's clear they're doing drugs, they're doing deals back in there, and nothing seemed to get done about it. So I'll tack that on to the homelessness.
First off, I appreciate you talking about this. As a retired Army colonel, first thing that I think about is obviously our veterans, and we have a lot of veteran homelessness. We've had a lot of veterans that a lot of people don't even understand what PTSD is. They've heard about it a little bit, but it's real. I spent 30 years on the mental health board. As I told you, I started out as a private in the Army making $3.03 a day. I retired as a colonel. It paid a little better by the time I retired in '94. But when you realize how many people that are homeless and why they're homeless. So having spent all this time on the mental health board, about 80% of the people that are suffering from homelessness aren't homeless. They've got a problem, either emotional, mental, alcohol, or drug addiction. And that's what puts them on the street. As you'll notice, give somebody a blanket this week, come back next week. They've sold it. The blankets aren't there anymore. And you see people that'll drop off blankets, come back next week, they're all gone because it's worth something. And they will, when people are addicted and you don't, unless you've dealt with this, I was a drug education specialist in the Army, among other things. When you understand that somebody gets addicted to something, they have no control over their life, zero. The only thing they're working on is how to get the next fix, the next hit, whatever it is. And these addictive personalities, when these people are homeless, we've got to be able to bring them in and give them a sense of belonging. They've got to believe that somebody cares about them. And that's one of the things. I started working on this homeless program actually before. Now, Roy's right. It became a little more public in October. But I had reached out to some the vet center and some folks up in Jasper County that had a homeless coalition, and I started going up there to see what they were doing. And you see these little mini houses they put together, because once you give somebody a place to stay, a home, then they have an address, which ties right into what Roy's saying. Where do you live? And under the underpass, you can't get mail there. You can't get contacted there. So I was looking at all the things that they were doing, and I started talking to them. And then one of the other council members was talking to another group that worked with the homeless. So we kind of came together, which started the City Homeless Program Coalition. And what we're trying to do with that is organize bring the resources together. I can remember when we started Some Other Place, and it's fascinating that the name is Some Other Place, because everybody that had an issue that either needed money for their electric bill or something like that, they'd go somewhere and they said, you're going to have to go some other place. We don't do that here. So that's how it really got the name. It was some other place that you could go and get some of the things that you needed. And Paul O'Neill is just, I've known Paula. We used to go to the same church a long time ago. And, she does a wonderful job. And one of the things that we've been working on is working with the Salvation Army, because the Salvation Army is across the interstate. Well, when it gets cold, and it's not like New York cold, because I've been to West Point when it was 25 below wind chill factor, and you go,
It's almost like that right
and you think, people live here. And then the next question is, why? But it never gets quite that cold here, but it still gets cold. And so you had these people that were staying in the Salvation Army and then had to walk to some other place in the weather. And there's nothing worse, as we all know, you're cold and wet, That's the most uncomfortable you can possibly be, is when you're cold and wet. And it rains here. Somebody mentioned that. It's kind of like the islands that you were talking about. But we're working literally with the Salvation Army with a building across the street to try we are making a whole lot of progress with that, to bring that up, which will house people literally across the street from some other place. Now, that's in the Old Town Oaks district. It's kind of expanded. It's pretty much anything from downtown going down Calder on both sides is the Oaks district. And but it also kept, if once we do that, we don't have these people having to trek under the underpass in the cold through the neighborhoods to get somewhere to have something to eat. And just to have some other place, and the Salvation Army, because one of the things that those of us been in the military know, one of the hardest things in the world is to get the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and the Marines to work together, because they all have different missions. And it works the same way when you're trying to help the homeless. Each one of those, whether it's nutrition for seniors, and we've worked on that, Roy, it's whose responsibility is it? And it's not that they don't want it, but there's only so much that you can do because it takes money. And unlike New York, where they fund the school district, the city does, and the city hall and a whole bunch of other things, down here we got our own school district. We got our own hospitals running their show. We don't have anything to do with that. We've got city government, but they're all separate. So the idea with the Homeless Coalition is, how can we bring all these people together and not overlap, but do what we can when supposedly we have around 1,000 homeless in the area. Now, unfortunately, the government picked January, I think it's the 21st, to count the homeless nationwide. Now, I don't know who picked that date, because I'm thinking it's not bad in Beaumont, Texas on January 21st, but who's out in New York City or Minneapolis or upstate New York, who's in Syracuse walking around that's homeless? They're trying to stay as close to something warm as they can. You would think they'd do it in July, at least where people are out, but whatever the reason is. But like Roy said, we're working on, we have the system, because once you can track those individuals, you find out what their problems are, because they all don't have the same problem, and you know what the problem is, and you try to help them solve that problem. It's not a universal solution of Bob's homeless, we got a plan.
Right.
You find out what Bob's problem is, and you solve it, and working together. And I'm really excited because we have all these people working together, and that's not always the case when you have different agencies.
Sure.
But everybody, that's the great thing about Beaumont, Texas, is everybody wants to work together, so we will find a solution to do it. And this time next year, we'll be a whole lot farther along.
Good. I love it. Yeah, so it's talking about working together. Everybody's pretty much saying very similar things on that aspect, right? Like coordinating, getting everybody on the right path with that. I got so many messages about the homeless population. Another one I got, and this is a good question, was let's talk about economic diversity moving into the future. You mentioned earlier about petroleum. We got refineries. They're here. Mm-hmm. So the person one of the people that was talking about this mentioned, and y'all may be able to help me out with this. Around 2015, Google had propositioned to put some fiber here. Do y'all know anything about this? Okay, so things of that nature. Amazon talking about coming here and putting a warehouse. Like, how are we? I'll toss this to you first. But as far as changing our economic diversity moving into the future, so we're not just refinery. We're not,
Yeah, I think that this is a real big work in progress. And we talk about all of our different entities, and we have to be able to connect those dots, right? So we have the school district, we have higher education, we have our businesses. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay.
That's all right.
All right.
I want them to hear you.
Okay. So we have our school district, we have higher education, we have our businesses, we have city leaders, we have community organizations. We need to be, I see all of those resources, but we need to be able to connect those dots. And we need to be able to do some research, right? And talk about assessing. So my first question is, what businesses, from what I understand, any business that wants to do a site tour of Beaumont goes to Entergy, and Entergy conducts that site tour. My question is, what kind of businesses have come and why have they left? And does that congregate into an industry? Right? This is legwork that we have to do. And then if we see a common industry, then we can build a market for it. It's not going to happen overnight, but at least we can take those steps. From what I know that the city has a contract with Beaumont Chamber for economic development. I'm curious because I know that there's an annual report. My question is, why isn't there more of a monthly report or a quarterly report so that we can really understand the direction of economic development? How do we make an assessment? And be communicative to the community, right? Because the community wants diversity, the community wants different opportunities. So we need to. It's about leadership coming together and really being able to connect those dots. If I believe that we need to be more proactive, right? So we have businesses coming here. We need to be able to tout why come to Beaumont, Texas. We talked about the phenomenal things of Beaumont, the great culture, the great weather, the people, the quality of living, the lower cost of living. That's huge. Let's start there. Let's talk about that. You didn't ask this, but I want to bring this because one of the biggest pieces to a community is the school district and the workforce. And so I think that there has been a lot that has happened with BISD, and I think we need to get off of that. And I think we need to tout the efforts of our school district and how things have turned around. We have phenomenal leaders there, phenomenal leaders at the helm. Dr. Allen, I personally am an advisor with CTE, so Dr. Prudhomme leads career and technical education. We need to be able to take the pieces. We're not going to turn our city around, in a day, but take those pieces, those valuable pieces, and tout to businesses why to come here. But the long and short of it is that we do need to do some research and we need to build, and it's not going to happen overnight. And we need to not only understand why businesses wanted to come here and why they left, but also understand the programs of study that we are delivering to our students, what our students are engaging in, what's important to them, what are they interested in. We're in a pandemic. We have all been forced to level up on technology. Technology is it's not going away. And so we're going to operate a lot on a technology platform. So we need to be able to make a market for technology businesses to come here. It's low-hanging fruit at this point. We saw BISD turn around an entire virtual education system in 3 months, which normally takes 3 to 5 years. We know the capabilities of our people, of our leaders. So we need to utilize that to be able to build more industry.
I love it. Base hits, not home runs.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Sometimes, I'm not gonna.
Every now and then you knock one out.
Yeah, every now and then.
Right.
Yeah, I'll always welcome a home run. But
Right.
Yeah, base hits, absolutely.
I love that. That's one of my favorite things I heard a while back. Roy, I'm going to toss that to you as far as economic diversity moving forward in the future. Should we just keep the oil and gas? Should we just keep the petroleum?
Well,
It's going to be here anyway. I know that, but
that's not going
that's
away.
the
but-
short shot. We know that.
But I'm going to follow Biguita here in what she was talking about. I've been a business partner with Homer Drive, and I was in the school a couple of days a week. It's an elementary school on the north side of town before COVID, and I'm still a business partner with them and have stayed connected to them. And when you look at other communities, and this is something that I've reflected on, is there just needs to be more cooperation. There needs to be greater relationships. And I'm not throwing shade, but I'm going to state some facts that we're experiencing right now with, the city of Beaumont and BISD. I mean, last February at the State of the City, BISD was there. They had 2 tables of their executive team, and at the state of the city, BISD was never mentioned. And now that was an oversight, but that's a big oversight because BISD is a partner in Beaumont because BISD is an important element of it. And I agree, Shannon Allen having the radio show. Matter of fact, since I can't do it, 1 out of every 6 show is given to BISD, and they host that show. And I have tremendous appreciation for what they do. And when people have asked me, and I get to say this a lot even before running for mayor, and people complain about BISD, I'd ask, when were you last time in the elementary schools? When were you there? And, because if not, go. You can volunteer. And, people say, well, volunteering is so hard. And I said, no, you send an email in with your social, your date of birth, and your name, and they run a criminal history on you. And then, then you'll get an email back, and then you can get signed up. It's really not hard. And but the way things are going to change in Beaumont, which includes our economic development, is that we begin to change in the community. Last week, they had a school board meeting, and I've reached out to the school trustees since I've been running for mayor, and and sat down with several of them, and just because obviously you got to stay in your lane. The city and BISD are 2 different institutions. I get it, but you got to know each other. You got to have each other's cell phone. You got to communicate, and and part of it's perception, and it's what gets said to the public. The BISD has been real frustrated with the city of Beaumont and has expressed it. They expressed it in their board meeting. And, part of it's just lack of communication. And we can do this, but that doesn't matter. I mean, we close home loans. At the end of the day, people want to buy a house. They don't want to know who's not doing their job right. We need to reach out, and we need to work together, because if we want to create a greater Houston partnership that they have, bringing all the entities together, including the other communities, including Lamar University and BISD and the Chamber, and do some visioning and work together rather than work individually and pull against each other. That's how things are going to change. That's what's going to make to outside businesses us more attractive. But when we have a lot of the bickering that occurs, and and the frustration. We had a council meeting Tuesday night, and there's a lot of tension on our council. A whole lot of tension, and those aren't attractive qualities. And so we have to deal with that internally before we're going to start getting people to line up to move their businesses here, because they're wondering what the heck's going on. And we know, those that are here, we know it's a great community, but we have some challenges, and we don't need to just say how great it is. We need to identify those challenges, and then we need to work to improve it, just like you do in business. You realize your weaknesses, and then you begin, and you can't do it by yourself. You've got to include other people. And so the vision's got to be everybody's vision. It can't just be the city council's vision. If you're wanting Lamar University in it, and you're wanting BISD, and you're wanting the Chamber, and you're wanting Better Business Bureau, and you're wanting all the county, and you're wanting all these other municipalities who've done real well with Beaumont's having the challenges that they have, being a mortgage banker, I know this. People move out of the area, but they're still here, coming to Beaumont, working, and oftentimes spending their money, eating and all that, which is great. But we just need to communicate better. We need to have better relationships, and we need to bring people together. And that's how we're going to improve our attractiveness to other businesses from out of the area coming in. And perception is so important. And when people get that little snapshot, it's like, okay, well, this isn't the place. I don't need any more. I don't need any more. I can go somewhere else. And so, and I do think that's one reason we've gotten so much attention on this city council race, and many people are joining in, because I think people feel like change needs to occur.
I love it. So I'm going to toss it to you, W.O. I'm going to add a little bit as far as local economics, right? Got a lot of questions about downtown, okay? And I know you've probably talked about that a million times. And the main thing I always go back to, because you talk to people and they're frustrated about the lack of activity downtown, right? They feel like there's all this opportunity, there's riverfront, there's all this. But at the end of the day, I can drive to a little West Texas town with a quarter of the population, and the downtown's popping. Mm-hmm. There's shops, there's restaurants. There's hardly anybody living there. But
You're not talking about Green, are you?
Well, not even smaller
Barney?
town. I remember when Bastrop, before Bastrop even started getting bigger. This is 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
I'll tell
you know.
Connie, who's the mayor of Bastrop, you were talking very kindly about it. Bastrop's a great place. But tying in with what we were talking about here, first off, I grew up in the schools here in Beaumont. And when I was growing up, a lot of kids weren't going to go to college. Vietnam encouraged a lot of people to go to college that may or may not have gone. But because of the GI Bill, a whole lot of my friends came back and went to college to learn after the fact, and the government was paying for it. But one of the things we need to keep in mind, because we live where we are, first off, when we step back, we've got to know who we are. And one of the great things, I feel very fortunate as an Army colonel, I taught Command General Staff College. And when you're looking at Europe, because that's the theater type Army that I would teach, you got to know who the other side is. You got to know who you are. I've known Shanna and Red since a long time before she was on superintendent of schools. I grew up here in Beaumont. Beaumont has got so much going for it, but people tend to be negative. You know, one of my favorite movies was Sin of a Woman with Al Pacino, and he's got this great line where he says, "I've been around, you know." Well, the difference between me and Al Pacino is he just played an Army colonel in the movies. I really am one, and I have been around. I have been to New York City. I loved it when you loved New York City because it was a great place to visit. But I've been to 40-plus states. I lived in other states. I've been to foreign countries. Beaumont is so great, and we take it for granted. I mean, we live in one of the best cities in the community. Our community is so much better than other places. And I've been there to know, and the average person never gets 500 miles away from where they were born. Now, it's hard for us to believe in today's society, but the average person doesn't venture out much. Beaumont is great. We have so much going for it. And when they talk about the school districts, our school district compared to, Biguita can help me with this because she knows that some of the schools in New Jersey and New York, that they got kids getting out of high school, can't read and write. And that's disgraceful. And my mother was a high school English teacher, so you can imagine everybody named Pate could learn how to. We were reading and writing and doing cursive early on, but we need to appreciate the fact that BISD is not the problem. The problem is us not doing what we can to help BISD be better. My dad used to tell me, he said, WL, there's three types of people in life: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wonder what happened. One of the problems we've had in Beaumont over the years is we've sit back and gone, we can live off of ExxonMobil, Valero, Motiva. We can't. We have to go out, and I've been doing this. I've been on the board of the Texas Municipal League, and so when I said I knew the mayor of Bastrop, I do. But we have so much going for us. We have to reach out. There are companies out there, and this is one of the things that I've been trying to move forward, for us with the Chamber of Commerce and with Lamar University and LIT. Lonnie Howard is doing a spectacular job. I've been on the advisory board out there for a number of years, and I said, look, we got to go out to the local businesses and say, what do you want? Not just expect them to take what we give them. The reason we're here, and I tell the professors out there, is because the students are here, not the other way around. And we're so fortunate to have the economic engine for Southeast Texas is Lamar University. And we have so much going for it. But LIT, when you can teach somebody in 2 years and they can come out and make $100,000, which is more than double what the average person makes in the United States, a family of four, this is somebody coming out with a skill. Our good friends over at the Plumbers Union, Jeremy Pavlik and those guys, if you're a plumber, the amount of money you can make with that skill, if you're a pipe fitter, today is off the scale. As we know, the folks that work at ExxonMobil and Motiva, they make twice as much as people in other industries, easily. I mean, I had friends that came out of high school, served in the military, came back, went to work for Texaco and Gulf and Mobil. Now it's ExxonMobil and Valero and Motiva and you name it. These guys retired millionaires with a high school diploma. Now, that's what we've got going for us. And we need to be out selling those students, saying, look, everybody doesn't need to go to college. College isn't for everybody, you know. And if you have a skill that you can use, no matter what happens, once you've learned how to do it, you're set. And there's a whole lot of college graduates out there that are unemployed because, like I told Sam Walton, I did a project for Sam Walton. He said, this is the most successful project we've ever had. When I opened Sam's Club, I did the marketing for Sam's Club here. We broke every sales record they ever had. Sam Walton walks up to me and he says, how you doing? I'm Sam Walton. I said, Mr. Walton, I'm W.L. Pate. He said, I know who you are. I said, you do? He said, W.L., in 4.5 weeks, you broke every sales record we've ever had opening a Sam's Club, and we normally take 6 weeks to do it. How did you do it? I got the richest man in the world asking me how I made him more money. And I said, gee whiz, Mr. Walton. And he said, you can call me Sam. I said, that's real hard for me, you know. And those of you that know my parents, it was always yes sir, no sir. He said, I'll take it as a personal favor. I said, yes, sir, Sam. I said, the only reason anybody goes into business is to make a profit. So I said, I just told people, and we didn't have any professional salespeople. I just taught them how to do this. I said, you're going to walk up to the person that runs this business and say, if I can show you how I can affect your bottom line, will you give me 7 minutes? The smart guy is going to go. And the dumb guy is going to go, no, and 5 years later or sooner, he'll be out of business because he's not smart enough to know you're going to make him some money and save him some money. And so Sam's Club opened up here in the recession, and they had opened up in Houston, San Antonio, New Orleans, and they weren't even close to us. But it's about how can I help you? And that's what we need to tell our students. We want to help you be better. You're not going to school just to go to school and check attendance. Your life, God put you here for a reason. It's to make the world a better place. What do you want to do, and how can we help you get there? That's why we're here. And that's why you're doing what you're doing. This is great, Trevor. I'm not kidding. I know that's the same reason Roy did his radio show, same reason I did mine. What can we do to inform people and make them better informed about what's going on so they can make more informed decisions? These students need to know, if you're a plumber, if you're a pipe fitter, if you're a project, you process operator, you literally can make $100,000 a year. And there are guys coming out with engineering degrees with jobs that don't make that. And that's what we have to offer here in Beaumont. We just need to start selling it. And Shanna's doing a great job. Dr. Howard's doing a great job. Lamar University has grown exponentially since Dr. Evans was there with virtual learning, and Lamar was way ahead of everybody else there as far as that goes. But we have so much going on in Beaumont, and we take it for granted. And I encourage people, I said, look, if somebody says something negative about Beaumont, I want you to think something. Now, Beaumont, pro football capital of the world. Jerry Levice, first black athlete to play in the Southwest Conference, went to SMU in 1965. We fast forward, he's all-pro wide receiver from San Diego, and he's on the Johnny Carson show one night. Johnny says, so, Jerry, where are you from? And Jerry, just off the top of his head, said, Beaumont, Texas, pro football capital of the world. And Johnny looks at him, and I know y'all probably seen that video. And Johnny looks at him, he looks at the audience, looks at the audience, looks at him, he goes, so who is from Beaumont, plays in the NFL? Thinking he's going to say W.L. Pate, Roy West, Trevor, somebody nobody's ever heard of that played in the NFL. He said, well, there's Bubba Smith, and there's Toady Smith, and there's Wayne Moore, who played with the undefeated Miami Dolphins in 1972. There's Louis Kelcher, there's Johnny Fuller, there's Warren Wells, there's Mel and his brother Mel Farr. And he starts reeling off these guys that are all pros that are from Beaumont, Texas. And since that time, we've had almost 100 people from Southeast Texas go to the NFL. Nobody's even close. Now, that is something for which to be proud. New York City doesn't have that many people, and they got 8 million people that live there. And
I didn't know that.
And that's the thing. When you do your homework about how good Beaumont is, I had somebody say, W.O., you're sort of the historian for Beaumont. I just have one of those. I don't have, as Sheldon Cooper said, I don't have it. They'll say photographic memory. He said that's not it. I don't have that. But when it comes to Beaumont, I remember things that are important. The first gusher in the world was Spindletop. We saved the whales when they hit that gusher. A lot of our friends that are very strong environmentalists don't realize they were burning whale oil in the Northeast until we hit Spindletop, and you could buy a barrel of oil for 10 cents in 1901, and millionaires were made right here in Beaumont at 10 cents a barrel. And that's just great.
Yeah.
I mean, who's got that to talk about?
No, there's so much history in this town, and there's so much. I think that is the frustrating thing, and that's the reason I got a lot of messages on it. Is people do see that potential, they see it, but I'm 38. I've lived here my whole life. Downtowns look the same the whole time. So I'm gonna kick this back to you, and we'll keep with the downtown district, maybe Riverfront. Just how do you see that going? What do you see any red tape? Do you see any
Well, first off, I want to take the opportunity to drive home some points that we all were talking about. As leaders, right? We are politicians, right? And let me take this off. So as politicians, we are here to serve the people. The problem with not being able to unite entities, that the only time that a city can flourish is if its main entities unite. The reason why entities do not unite is because we are stuck in our ego. This is not a personal agenda. This is not for power's sake. This is not for money's sake. This is not for opportunity. When you step up to be a politician, you are to serve the people holistically. And so I think that, Roy, you talked about city council. Shame on us for not being able to lead by example. Shame on us for not being able to check our ego and to be able to at least listen and respect our colleague, our individual. We cannot get caught up in that because we are responsible for leading an entire city. It's very important. The other thing that I wanted to kind of chime in with W.L. Pate and talking about, the great job of BISD with career and technical education, the great job of Lamar Institute of Technology. We have to peel back the onion because we have great opportunities for great education. However, we need to make sure that while we have great opportunities for great education, our children are educated, that we have the job opportunities to connect them to. Because we can oversaturate. Do you understand what I'm saying? Lamar Institute of Technology, process operators, we can be pumping people through there and not understanding whether or not there's real life opportunity. The last thing I want to drive home is making our businesses accountable, right? Making our businesses and our refineries accountable. They come here, they get phenomenal tax abatements, and we need to make sure that they deliver. Currently, I am working with putting some legislation together with State Rep Joe Desatel on what is called the 313 tax abatement agreements. And in that, businesses have a commitment, right? A workforce commitment, a commitment to the local communities. But what we found is that the commitment is loose in terms of being able to oversee it and enforce the commitment. And oftentimes, when there's projects that are done, there's loopholes, right? So for instance, XYZ refinery says we have this project, but we, the refinery, we only are creating 10 new jobs. So we ask the question, but what are your subcontractors creating, right? And if you can't create those jobs because you're getting $1 million in tax incentives, what are you delivering? Are you delivering workforce? You can deliver training. You can deliver apprenticeship. That they may not be, our people may not be hired by you, but they are in position to be hired. So we just need to do a lot of peeling back the onion and checking our egos at the door, seriously, if we want to move forward.
Amen.
I like it.
Amen. 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 The other, you talked about downtown.
Downtown, yeah.
Downtowns are my favorite. Every time that I visit a city, that's the first place I go to. Why? Because that's the heart and soul of a city, the culture of a city. You eat, you get entertained, you can listen to music. Actually, when I first came here in 2013, Crockett Street was not dead. It was back in 2013. It was popping. Mm-hmm. I love to go down there. I think that that's a place where people need to be revitalized. I am currently on the board of the Downtown Beaumont Alliance Arts and Downtown Beaumont Alliance. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to revitalize and really so this is where we're going to start, and this is really exciting. It's a project where we provide affordable housing to artists. Because, the whole idea of starving artists, right? Artists don't
Please don't starve in Beaumont. No.
We
don't want them to starve. We don't want them to starve. But no, I'm just making.
So the whole idea, right? So this is a passion. We want to be able to feed an individual's passion, but the money may not come. And Trevor, you know this, right? The money may not come the way you want it. So how do we instill culture and at the same time making sure that our artists are taken care of? So I think that there's tremendous work. I would love to see Crockett Street. The riverfront, but I don't think that it's a lost cause. I think that we need to be able to, again, bring our resources together, understand, go out and tout Beaumont to bring investors here. It's tremendous opportunity. It's just a matter of being able to walk that walk and having enough people who believe in the vision, right? So, and balancing it. As a city, we constantly hear about infrastructure. I was listening to the city council meeting yesterday and all the things that we're talking about, right? And I'm asked about infrastructure all the time. Infrastructure, drainage. The balance of being the leader, the politician, is being able to juggle all of that, because you can't just focus on one thing and leave something out. You have to be able, it has to be a machine, and you have to be able to move and drive everything forward.
Okay, I love it. So Roy,
Yes, sir.
you're our real estate guy.
Well, mortgages.
Sorry.
That's all right.
You know a thing or two.
Yeah.
You know a thing or two. So talk to me about
And he doesn't
downtown.
work for Farmers Brand.
Because I got a lot of questions about downtown, man.
Okay.
Like people, you talk to them. Like I've had long conversations about downtown, potential of downtown,
Right.
for many years, and it is like people get frustrated when they start talking about it. What's your vision for it? How do you see that playing out?
Great question, and it's a question that probably all of us get from time to time, and certainly downtown. I was born in Beaumont in 1960, so I grew up in downtown. For a good part of my life was just declining, and right now it looks beautiful. Kudos, it really looks beautiful, and it didn't always look like that. And the city's done a great job of getting that there, and certainly. But what is our vision? And it's not going to be set by just one of us here. Absolutely. It's going to be set by the community. Mm-hmm. It's going to be set by these partnerships that we talk about. Getting Lamar downtown, having a presence down there. How could that happen? Maybe it can't, but maybe it can. They just voted on the Edison Lofts, where they may be getting a retirement senior apartments in the loft, which is cool building down there. We've got to get people down there. We've had restaurants down there. I know some of those people that have been involved in it, but if you're not making money, it doesn't stay open. Now, there's lots of reasons for that. It could be poor management. So when it comes to business, but if you attract it and you bring people in, and the city has a vision to help do that, I think it can make a big difference. And certainly we've talked about riverfront development. We've talked about downtown development. there's been other things that we've talked about, but it's just that. And so people get frustrated with it. And I'm not saying that any of those solutions are going to happen over their night. They're not. But I think if we can build community around it and bring the different entities together, because the city council is not going to do it on their own. That's not going to happen. And so I think we've got to build better relationships. That makes everything so much more attractive when you can talk to one another and you understand where people are. And some people say, well, I don't agree with that. Man, I love my wife a lot. I don't agree with her all the time.
I know where
so
this
I
is
totally
going.
get, but we need to be civil.
Sure.
And have civil
Yes.
discourse when we don't agree. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It matters what the community wants, not just what the mayor or the council wants. They need to hear what the people want. We have a diverse community. It's not near as represented well on our city council as it ought to be. I mean, and I know for myself, I've had several of my kids' friends move out and move away, and I understand. They feel like, what's here for a young family, all of these things. And we need to have younger people on council too. I mean, we've got, I think, one person, Taylor's 35 to 37, and everybody else on council is 60 or older. And I don't think
don't
I'm.
talk it.
No, and there's not. No, there's nothing wrong with that, W. And I'm 60.
Wait,
so,
that sound like Seinfeld. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
But we do.
Don't laugh, Zach.
We need diversity. We need to work towards that. And there's decisions you can make. Term limits for city council. That's a good one right there. And I mean, part of it is you can have people serve on council a long time, and you really can't look to a whole lot of benefit from that. And again, one thing that happens is complacency and personalities that don't get along. And then all of a sudden it can become about a personality or personalities on council, and they're not getting things done because it's personal. And that hurts Beaumont. I mean, we want Beaumont to thrive, and I think all three of us are running for that reason, because and I'm certainly not to imply that people that are serving on council right now don't want Beaumont to thrive, but the longer there's seasons of life. I mean, my business that I have here in town, my son-in-law, I brought him in 4.5 years ago. He's got his MBA. He was running another business in an entirely different deal. It's thriving. And I attribute a lot of that to him, because he's brought in some fresh ideas. I'm still there. I'm still helping. I'm still a part of it. I'm still in charge, if you will. But I also recognize when I brought him in that I said, hey, I want some youth, some new energy. And then I had to give him that power to do that. And he would do things, and I would sit there and have to bite my tongue, and because that's not how Roy did it. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of them worked out really well. And we were able to communicate, and so that's been a great thing for us. But I think with everything, there's seasons in people's lives, and the longer they're there, they can get distracted by some of the other noise. And currently, I don't think there's any disagreement that our council has gotten distracted by a lot of other noise, and it gets too much. Too much of the press is just about the fact that they don't get along. And that's not attractive, and quite honestly, that's the case.
Yeah, it just doesn't look good, and
it doesn't look good, and then and it doesn't make it attractive for people that want to get involved in the community to get in there, because it's like, man, so. All I know is we've got to work harder. We've got to work on our relationships. We've got to realize that all these other institutions are important as well, and we need to come together to do that. And people can say, well, how do you do that? It's by picking up the phone and calling. It's what we've all been doing. You start that way.
I love it.
And we're a melting pot. We have to represent every ethnicity.
Right.
It's a phenomenal place. We have Hispanic, we have white, we have black, we have Filipino, we have Middle Eastern, Vietnamese,
Native American.
Native American. We have to be able to understand the interests of all those communities, which can be very different and different perspectives,
Sure.
and bring that together. That's our responsibility.
I love it. So,
Well,
let's.
what you had mentioned downtown, a lot of people, I don't routinely tell people that I have a master's degree in economics and a master's degree in military arts and science that I got in the United States Army. But one of the things that you understand about economics is what's, just like I told Sam Walton, the only reason anybody goes into business is to make a profit. Once they have a profit, then they can hire their relatives and give money to charity. Up till then, they can't. And that's one of the things that I've been working on. There's a building downtown that I've been working with the owners and Marriott and some people to come in and literally turn it into a downtown Marriott hotel. Well, first off, you got to know who to call. And when you bring in the architect for Marriott out of New Orleans that only works literally on the East Coast, they have one out in San Francisco, works on the West Coast, that designs full-service Marriott hotels, and you put one in downtown Beaumont right there on the river. Now, this goes back, all of us had the opportunity to go to Baton Rouge and New Orleans and some of the other great cities that are on the river. Ours is picturesque compared to some of their stuff. I mean, really. But I've been working on this, and as you well know, when you start trying to move the stone, it's like that engine pulling out of the station. It doesn't hit 60 miles an hour immediately. But John Campo is the architect for Marriott, and he's developed other projects like this in Houston. And I actually have guys that I'm working with that have the money that Marriott's given the okay. We just need to work through the details with the owner of that particular building to make that happen. And again, none of this during COVID, as we all know, a whole lot of stuff just shut down. Mm-hmm. It's like we were talking about the homeless. We really started trying to work on that. Mike and I did back in March, but basically it was put on hold till the fall because we really couldn't get together with anybody. But Beaumont, you got to have a vision of where you can take Beaumont. And one of the things, there's a book I read every day, and one of the heroes of the Old Testament is Moses. He led the children of Israel out of Egypt. They were enslaved for 450 years. And now, last time I checked, according to the Bible, and I'm not going to argue with it, Moses was 80 when he started and 120 when he finished, because they walked around the desert for 40 years. Age is a number. It's what's your vision? And the deal about understanding leadership, and I taught that with the military. I mean, literally, most of my students outranked me and were younger that I was teaching about leadership. And every single leader has a couple of things in common. Empathy, and that people believe, they understand, like Jesus, the greatest leader of all time, those disciples had to believe they were on the same page. This guy understands what we're talking about, what we're dealing with. And you got to have a vision. Leaders develop leaders. They don't develop followers. When Becky first got elected back in 2007, she anticipated she was going to run 2 or 3 terms and then she was going to leave. And the whole time I told her, I said, look, Becky, when you decide at some point in time, I don't want to run against you as long as we can keep moving. I'm a team player. When you're a quarterback, you got to be on the same team. I don't need to score the touchdowns. I just want the team to win. And I said, Becky, I don't want to run against you. I don't want to, as long as we can keep things moving forward. And if she had stopped 2 or 3 terms or 4, I'd already served a couple of terms and been gone, because I don't want to stay down there forever. I've literally stayed anticipating, again, not wanting to get the fact that I didn't want to run against the mayor. As long as Beaumont was moving forward and we were moving forward, I had different ideas, but we all do. I mean, all of us here have different ideas on where we think we can take the city. but you got to have you have to see what other people have done that worked, and you got to be able to tell people, look, this is what we can do. I believe it. And when you're talking to people, they got to know you're looking them straight in the eye and go, we can do this. It's about getting everybody on the same team. And I've developed teams, multiple businesses. And when I was in the military, I was the headquarters commandant of the largest reserve unit in the United States. We had 600 reservists in the 80s. We had 3 generals. One was a 2-star, 2 was a 1-star, and there were 25 full colonels. And I was the headquarters commandant. We had the greatest retention in 5th Army in a reserve unit in Houston, Texas. Now, what do you think about that? It's all volunteer. They could walk in today and go, I don't want to do this anymore. Well, somebody had to be telling them, look, what you do counts. And some of those young men that were enlisted, like Rick Noriega, who was in that unit, that group literally retired as a colonel and was a state representative, was just a Spec 4 when I met him in the late 70s. You got to give people a reason. You cannot, when they talk about motivation, you can't motivate people, but you can give them a reason to be motivated and say, here's what we can do. Here's the difference you can make. But we got to work together. Now, when it comes to dealing with people, probably one of the nicest things that ever happened to me was when I was in high school, I was voted most friendly. Now, they don't have to, they got to like you to do that. They could give you a lot of other stuff, but people that know me, I haven't changed. I act the same way today as I did then. I'm going to treat everybody the same way. And when you bring people together and you are a leader, if you've got when you got an Army staff or a company because I had 3 offices in Houston, 1 in Ohio. When you got people all over, you got to bring them all together because everybody doesn't work together well. And when you have a problem, you bring them together in private and you say, look, I don't care if you do a WWE cage match on Saturday night, but when we show up at City Hall, I expect you to act like a gentleman and a lady. And that isn't even an option. But you bring them together and say, look, people are looking at us. And if you go, all the people that have known me, look, I work with everybody and have. And sometimes you can't let your ego get in the way because a lot of people have it. There's a world of difference. As Lee Iacocca once wrote in his book, there's people who have strong egos. In other words, they know who they are. And then there are people who have big egos, and their attitude is, I'm really special. I'm just a guy, grew up in Beaumont, Texas, and I've got to do some of the greatest things. Every day I thank God. I'm the luckiest guy on planet Earth. And I tell people, I said, you saw the movie Forrest Gump. That's how I feel. I've got to do some of the neatest things. And just like Forrest, he wasn't trying to be famous. He just got to hang out with some real cool people. Kind of like I'm hanging out with you guys today.
Very nice, very nice.
And we've got to tell people how fortunate they are, and let's get together and make it happen instead of watching what happened or wondering what happened.
Or criticizing what's happening.
Right.
Oh, yeah, anybody.
Yeah. And that's kind of, you just said criticize, and that kind of, so that's why I think, we have our social media. In my opinion, it's a double-edged sword. We can use it for the
Amen.
Greatest thing in the world.
Absolutely.
Or it can just tear us all apart, right? For some reason, we're a little more concerned with the entertainment side of it and the drama rather than the educational and formal side. I don't know how to fix that, but we got to do something about that, right? But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to hit you with one last round of questions, okay? Because I got a lot of people were asking about crime in Beaumont, Texas. And I know we kind of touched on this, maybe a little bit of this earlier, but, you're averaging 1 to 2 shootings a night. Maybe a homicide a week. That's not an official number, but I know there's 1 to 2 shootings at night from talking to police officers, sometimes more,
Yeah.
a big part when you talk to people about this and you have long conversations, a lot of times they go back to youth and fixing the problem at home, fixing the problem with the youth, fixing the problems, just positive leadership growing up. So one of the things that I've had several conversations with a lot of different people is how to deal with community service, youths getting in trouble, and how to point them. You know, more often than not, they don't have strong leadership at home. It's not there. That's why they're out there doing bad things in the first place, right? How do we as a community tackle this? And one of the things that got brought up in having these conversations was when the tennis courts got put up off of College Street and the amount of money that was put into that, as opposed to, here's my selfish side. I'm a martial artist. So I look at that. I look at
like
things.
Cobra Kai. Right?
Well, I like things. I like
Who
things
doesn't
that
like
are
Cobra Kai?
accessible.
You got to say it's on Netflix.
I want accessibility for young youths to get leadership. And one of the ways to do that is, I know for a fact, through martial arts. I'm not saying everybody needs to come train jiu-jitsu with me, but what I'm saying is when I see tennis courts put up, I see a certain amount of people that's going to cater to. I get it. They spend money. There's revenue. I get it. But if you're really talking about fixing a community, you have to get these youths, in my opinion, in good leadership roles. And one of the ways you do that, I saw tennis courts that could have been basketball goals. I'm a wrestling fan, wrestling rings, boxing, all these things that are cheap, don't cost hardly any money. You can build teams, you can have leagues, you can have all these coaches that'll volunteer their own time. I'd be more than happy to come out and teach kids for the youth. So I'm gonna go to you first. And
Go to me? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm curious, WL, because I am going to reference yesterday's council meeting. From what I understand, did you see yesterday's council
did not.
meeting? Okay, so there was some.
You can access it on the website.
Okay, good deal.
So for the people that can't make it at 1:30 or 6 o'clock.
Right.
they
No, that's
need to
actually,
know.
they really do need to know
they can
that.
access.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt,
No,
but
don't
just to
worry. Yeah.
let them.
And it's up the next day.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why our city council is divided into wards, and then we have councilmen at large, and then we have a mayor. And so we need to be able, I'm curious about the budget process. You know, I heard Audwin and Mike Getz talk about that. And I think that it's important that in that budget process, we represent the needs of the entire community. So so tennis courts, that appeals to a certain youth demographic.
It does.
Okay. But then again, we have to think of each ward, what is the demographic of that ward? What are those youths interested in, and appeal to them? We have to be able, again, I always say this, appeal to the entire city. And I'm curious what happens in those budget meetings where funds are allocated to certain projects, and whether or not is there a lack of representation from each ward to make sure that these things are represented. Currently, I think I agree with you in terms of youth. We need to be able to tackle youth. I told you the primary reason for me moving to Beaumont is that I had a youth who was not walking in the right direction. And I said, and I recognized, and I was blessed with the opportunity to be able to move him to a different place. Everyone doesn't have that opportunity. And it's oftentimes when parents are trying to keep the roof over their heads, kids are idle. And when kids are idle, they tend to look the other way. And so I think part of this big piece, and this is why I really feel like I can contribute on a very keen level to the community of Beaumont, is that getting them interested in careers and workforce, right? And not necessarily 4-year degrees, 2-year degrees, maybe a certification. These kids are turning to a life of crime because they want, it's fast money, it's lucrative, it's appealing, it's sexy, right? So how do we get them to be empowered with the talents and skills that they have, and guide them to a proper living? Currently, I'm very excited to say that I'm working with law enforcement and some judges and BISD, and we're going to try to do a pilot program with youth. I speak unity all day long. It has to be diverse. It has to be youth from different areas in the city, youth from different ethnicities. And to be able, from what I understand, within the age range of 18 to 25, we lose our youth because our youth come out of high school and they're not in college or anything like that. And they don't have that next step. They don't have the structure. So how do we go about pouring into them during that senior year to say, what is your next step? And not only about your next step, but what's really important, family values, character, work ethic, discipline. The technical piece, the education piece is important, but how do you operate as a contributing citizen and really molding our individuals into responsible men and women who are going to take care of family? I think a big piece of this is we lost family, right? And I'm not going to throw darts at that. Stuff happens. We have blended families. I'm in a blended family. But be able to show our children how important it is, family values, and to be a leader of your household, so on. So I say all that to say, and I know I started with a question to you, but during that process, what is happening? What is lacking that every youth is not represented?
No, well, actually,
every ward is not represented in terms of what capital projects are.
Well, actually, when we get that's an excellent question because a lot of people don't know. We do have 1, 2, 3, 4 wards and 2 at large. Of course, the mayor we run at large. When we get together on these budgets, Audwin has some ideas. Robin has some ideas. Mike Taylor's got some ideas. Randy and I have some ideas. On what's the best thing for our community. Washington Boulevard, we just renovated that. $33 million over in Ward 4, okay, because the focus, we've only got so much money. I mean, that's just the reality of it, because we don't want to raise taxes. I want to try to keep taxes I know in economics, if the taxes are lower, there are more people working. We raise the taxes on industry, they're going to lay people off. Because they're going to look at the bottom line and go, I got to cut back. And it's the same thing. If our taxes are too high, people will move out of Beaumont. And fortunately, our taxes are actually lower than, as far as our property tax, than some of the surrounding communities. When it comes to getting people involved, we need, ever since we've pretty much taken the focus away from God and saying, look, God put you here for a purpose. You can count on the kids that don't have a father at home, and they're going to end up in jail. Their percentage of going to jail is significantly higher than somebody with a two. And so my hat's off to you when you've had to raise kids by yourself, because a lot of them have been exceptional and done great things, but the average doesn't. And that's what happens when you don't have two people, a mother and a father at home, raising kids saying, look, we're counting on you. God put you here for a purpose. We want you to reach it. When I was in my early 20s, I was coaching a minority football team down at the downtown Y before we even had the Melton after work. And I still laugh because the first day after practice, I said, now, if y'all need a ride home, I'll be happy to help you. Well, next time we practice, every kid needed a ride home. I'm going, my car's only so big. But again, that goes back to giving back. And what do you do to encourage kids? Because everybody they didn't have the father that you had, or that I had, and I'm assuming that you had, Trevor, or the mothers that we had. So they look for leadership to tell them, look, you're important. Don't give it away. I mean, when you have people dropping out of school today, that is, I guarantee you, their next stop is the Styles unit. I mean, that's because they're going to be on the street and they're going to be doing things that our parents used to tell us. Look, you don't have to hang out with everybody, but you're nice to all of them. But there are some kids that are just looking for something to do, and it's when they when they have the proverbial idle man is the devil's workshop kind of thing, it still works like that. And we got to incentivize these young kids. And like you said, well, and I was joking about Cobra Kai, but if you have Netflix, you'll love this. You will love it, and it's about karate, and it's a great story if you get a chance. But it's about what you can learn, and all these kids in that particular show, it's about developing confidence. Everybody doesn't have it. My sister passed away with COVID on Christmas Eve. And when I was growing up, a lot of people think I just always acted like this and had a whole lot of confidence. My sister Pat wasn't going to let me not have it. She said, look, this is what you can do. And, when we're guys growing up and we're 10 or 12 or 13 or 14, guys are goofy. They don't know. Women mature a whole lot faster than we do. Oh, I know. Believe me, I know. My dad used to say, WL, hang out with smart people. If they're beautiful, smart women, you're way ahead of the game. And then he said, that's why I hang out with your mother, which tells you how smart my dad was. And that's why you hang out with Trish and I hang out with Shireen, because we don't know everything. Will Rogers said, we're all ignorant, just in different subjects. And what we need to do, and this is part of leadership, what do you know that I don't know? What do you know that I don't know? What does Roy know that I don't? I want to learn from you guys. I don't know all the stuff you know how to do. The Army did teach me a little hand-to-hand combat, so I got a pretty good idea how that worked. And hopefully we don't get that close, but we need. That's what leadership's about. It's about bringing people together that have different backgrounds, and just like you said, making sure that we're doing everything for as much as we can. And when we go over the budget process, everybody has input. Every single ward says, look, this is what we want to do. And we try to balance it out because, I'm sitting there like Randy and the mayor, we represent the whole city. So I don't pick a ward. I've lived in every single ward in Beaumont, Texas. Every single ward. But I don't pick a ward and go, I want to help this one or that one. What's the best thing for Beaumont? Mm-hmm. And that's the way we all try to make it work. And you got to have 4 votes. And, I learned from the military, and I've tried to pass this along to some of my other council members. I learned every battle doesn't start with charge. Sometimes you sit down and go, as Sun Tzu wrote in 457 BC, you pave the way to retreat with a velvet rope. You always give people the option of accepting what you're trying to get done and make it easier on them, as opposed to pounding it and saying, you're going to take this or else. And again, that's part of the leadership. We need to start with our children in elementary school and say, you're important. You can make a difference. And they need to be reinforced with that every single day. And it breaks my heart because we've all gone through the grocery stores and hear somebody talk about how stupid their kids are. Well, if you tell them they're stupid, they believe they are. And then they never get past that. And that's when they need other people outside the family to go, number one, you can do my dad used to say, the only person holding you back is the person you're looking at when you comb your hair. And Trevor, it doesn't take either one of us that long anymore. But that's the only person that can really hold us back. And once we realize that, we empower those young men and women to see what they can do. But I'm open to any ideas, like you said, with the martial arts or anything. Awesome. I don't play tennis. I did a long time ago, and I used to do a lot of things a long time ago, but now I read a lot.
Well, it's just about, like I said, creating more avenues of leadership.
Sure.
Yeah. It's not just one. Like for a long time, some kids are fortunate to have a great coach at their school that pulls them in. but that's only a certain percentage.
Yep.
We need more, So, like I said, that's one of the things I definitely wanted to touch on. So I'll shoot it over to you, Roy, as far as the. Oh, sorry,
Roy,
go ahead.
can I just say
Sure.
one more thing? Because I just want to correct. You gave me a hats off for raising my kids alone. I didn't raise my kids alone. So let me so what I want to say is that I was a single mom in that I wasn't with their dad. Their dad is a strong presence in their life, and that's how I got to Beaumont, because their dad moved to Beaumont, and I knew that my son needed to be closer to his father, and he has given them tremendous value in their life.
Great.
What I want to say to the people out there is that blended families happen. People break up, divorce happens. If we could really empower our parents that despite those differences, you still have to come to some type of common ground for your children.
You got to be mom and dad.
Yes, you have to be mom and dad, and that doesn't get taken away.
That never changes.
Absolutely.
So
we're
on the same page.
Yeah.
We're singing from the same hymn book, as they say in the Baptist church.
So I just
like
wanted
it.
to clear that. Thank
Very
you.
good, very good. Roy?
Well, I'm excited for Beaumont. I'm appreciating hearing all that they say, and we share so much. Some of the ideas, I think part of it begins, and we have a city manager form of government, we have a council, but my son, who's in Charleston, South Carolina, that lives out there and has a family, he graduated from Westbrook in 2009, and during that time, he became a lifeguard for the city, and because it paid $10 an hour, and at that point he was working at Burger King making like $7.75, and being a lifeguard's a lot better but the city has wonderful pool in the south end and on the north end of town, but of course this year it didn't open because of COVID, but every prior year they don't have enough lifeguards. They don't ever have enough lifeguards, and yet we've got a great natatorium out with BISD. We've got lots of students, and I sit back and I've asked the question, let's use the resources we have first. I'm all about other ideas, but if we're not managing our current resources very well, we probably don't need to add additional resources until we're managing what we have well, and are aware of it. And I just think we need to give kids opportunities and to be engaged. And in that case, like my son, he got to work all he wanted, and he loved it. But
he got a tan.
That's right, and he recruited friends, and of course, you've got to pass the lifeguard test.
Red Cross, yeah.
Because his youngest, my oldest bonus starter, which is right underneath him, she went and she had trouble with it. She's a great nurse, okay, but so she is a lifeguard, but not in the sense that she
passed
right. Not in the sense that she passed that test. But so it's challenging, and it also costs money. I think back then it was $150, and they had to go to Nederland because there wasn't anywhere in Beaumont that was offering lifeguard courses.
And it was the Red Cross it was teaching.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so, those are the kind of things that we can begin to look at, because there are limited financial resources, but we've got a lot of available here that we're underutilizing. And, those are the things that need to be looked at first, I believe, and then grow from there. And I think the city will grow just because we begin to become better stewards of our own resources. And I know oftentimes that becomes a frustration for people, because when they can't flush their toilet, that's a real problem. When they have brown water, no matter how well they're told that you don't have to worry about it. I've got a 7-month and a 5-month old grandchild here in town, and would I put them in brown water to give them a bath? No. It may be perfectly fine, but it doesn't look fine to me. Mm-hmm. So there's those kind of issues that we need to respond to, and we need to take care of. And that doesn't get into crime when you initially ask that. Yeah. I will say one reason I said what I said earlier about a vision and the relationship and metrics is I think our police department does a pretty remarkable job.
They do a great job.
And I think there is crime, just like there's toilets that don't flush. And when you're experiencing it, it is the foremost thing on your mind, and we need to get better at it. But we also need to provide the analytics every month, because then we know. It's right there in front of us. And sometimes when people are saying, I had a guy that was telling me we're the murder capital of the world. In my understanding, and I may be wrong here, but I don't think I'm very wrong. I think last year we had 20 homicides in the city. 20. I think maybe 2 or 3 years before that we had 40. And but homicides, they happen by people that the people know, at a very high percentage rate. It's not just random acts of violence that people die. All of that, I'm not deferring any of that. We need to work in law enforcement. We need to work in our communities. But if we're not taking care of our kids and giving them other opportunities, those are going to be hard. You're getting the cart before the horse. If you're saying, hey, kids, we got nothing for you, but don't commit crime. And we can't, as a city, go out and be everybody's mom and dad, but we can be encouragers. We can build relationships. We can look at the systems that we have and all the different organizations that we have and try to start putting people together so that we can change things. And as Biguita has talked about, BISD, they were starting a longshore workers program. They were looking to do that because they know the whole east side of Nature's River is going to be developed and there's going to be a shortage. They're doing so many wonderful things.
Innovative.
Very innovative. And we've, so I think there's a lot of opportunity, but we all need to work together. And then when you hear council and you hear the school board, when there's bickering going on that, people get caught up in the bickering rather than what's happening.
Yeah.
And people get frustrated with BISD when you got teachers and you got administrators and you got parents and you got volunteers that are pouring their heart and soul in. And that's why I say go out to the schools, because when you see these, there's the lion's share of them, and there are problems everywhere. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of people doing a lot of great stuff.
In a pandemic. Risking their lives every day.
That's right.
Roy has done a great job with Crime Stoppers. We're both big supporters of that. But it's really important, like you said, to understand that most of the crime that's committed is drug-related, and particularly if there's shootings involved, it's with people they know. And some of the smash and grabs are from people that don't even live here, that come over here. I mean, when you catch the criminals and they're from Houston, they are. But there was a great song a long time ago when they used to write great songs you could hear and understand. That had to do with accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. And that's what we need to do in Beaumont. Anybody can complain. I mean, basically, we've all agreed on that. There are people out there that are just going to complain. It doesn't make any difference. You gave them $500, they'd go, well, you gave me 5 $100 bills. What if I break one of these? Next thing I know, it's gone. And you're going, I just gave you $500. There are some people that are going to complain, but grateful people are joyful. And when you wake up in the morning and say, thank you, Lord, after that, you've put it in place and everything's going to be better. If you wake up in the morning and instead of saying good morning God, you say good God morning, it's not going to be a good day because you've already decided it's not going to be a good day. But we have so much, and we've agreed on that. We got so many assets. We just need to accentuate the positive that we have and focus on it and say, I don't want to hear negative stuff. I don't want to hear it. Not that it's not there, but dadgummit, focus on the good things. We got the #1 military port in the United States of America. We've got the third to fourth largest port in the United States of America in Beaumont, Texas. The waterways. And we're dredging it so we can take bigger ships, just like Roy was saying. I was a longshoreman when I was in college because it paid $100 to go down there and throw around 100-pound sacks of flour all day long. Nothing else, and that wasn't $7.75 that your son was making back then. But we've got so much that are just terrific. We can be anywhere, and since we've both been in New York, you can be anywhere in Beaumont, Texas in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. You can go someplace else.
Exactly.
I mean, that's why I never moved to Houston. I had more offices over there and here because I didn't want to take 30 minutes to meet somebody for lunch.
Yeah. Hey, so let's round this up. I love it. So, man, I can't thank you all three enough
Thank
for coming
you.
in
We
here
thank you.
because
Yes,
this
this
is
is fantastic.
I kind of got that my little selfish smile on my face. 'Cause like I said, this is what I wanted to do from the get-go, is get people that are actually either running for office or in office to come in here and really, like I said, it's for them at home. It's for you at home. It's about you. It's about being informed voters and being involved at the local level. We have to figure out a way, as I said in the beginning, in my opinion, to get rid of our fascination and our obsession with the national stage, because it's, in my opinion, it's turned into somewhat of an entertainment industry. You hear it referred to as national politics is professional wrestling, and I think we really are at that point. I know there's issues we need to discuss, big issues on the national stage. Those are never going to go away. We'll always continue to discuss them, but I'm very much a believer in the mentality of, if you can't fix your own home, you're not going to fix anything else. You're not going to fix your city. You're not going to fix your state. You're not going to fix your country. It's just not going to happen. Hasn't worked so far, right? So, man.
Yeah, but we have to educate our people to know how important that local leadership is,
Right.
and how it impacts their everyday.
How do we get people to look at you three with as much fervor and
Absolutely.
and just being so involved as they do Biden or Trump?
Yeah.
Well,
You know,
And you talked about, at the beginning, you talked about voting for popularity's sake.
right?
That is so superficial. And we need to be able to change the culture of that.
And how many people are watching this right now, or how many people are in this city alone that walked into that voting booth and just went check, check, check,
yeah,
check,
I
check,
know
check,
that
check,
name,
check.
check.
Yep. And
Jesse James got elected treasurer of the state of Texas, and I guarantee you there isn't 6 people that knew what Jesse James did, except
had that name.
that Warren G. Harding was also the treasurer of Texas, but he happened to, one was an outlaw and one was the president. Of course, in politics today, who knows what the difference is? But they recognize the name. And I ask people, and I know we all feel this way, you need to look and say, who do you think can lead you the best for 2 years? This isn't a lifetime job, and just for the record, you get $400 a month salary and some other expenses if you know how to type and you do your own stuff, which I do. But it's $400 a month if you're a council member, and I think it's $600 if you're the mayor. Nobody does this for money. I mean, your motivation is not that. And, and I want to say this, Becky was there for 27 years. That's exactly how long I was in the Army. You got to be dedicated and committed to want to do it that long, whatever it is. And she's to be commended for that. And now she's in a position where she wants to go do some other things, which is exactly how I felt when I retired out of the Army Reserves after 27 years. Okay, I've done this.
Seasonal.
That's right.
Seasonal. Bringing
you
it
gotta-
back. It's evolution. You're always
Life has
moving
seasons.
forward, always
Right.
changing.
If you,
Man.
like Satchel Paige said, don't look back. Somebody might be gaining on you. and,
Just keep going.
and
Keep going.
You got to keep going.
Man, thank y'all so much for coming in
Thank
here.
you.
So, Robin Mouton, LaShawn Proctor, 2 other people that are running for mayor. I'm going to be getting in touch with you soon to bring you in here and do the exact same thing. Hopefully you'll be able to come on, and maybe once we get closer to actual election time, things will filter out. Maybe not everybody's running. Who knows what's going to happen. Get you back in here
Looking forward to it.
and get some
Thank
more
you.
conversation.
That would be
much.
great.
Thank y'all so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for tuning in to Civil Discourse. Keep it civil.
Keep it civil.
Amen.